Hey everybody, welcome back to Off the Wall. I'm Mike.
And I'm Sol.
It's always a bummer when you got to do one of these.
Yeah.
All right, so as I'm sure everyone is at least somewhat aware of now, especially since we were going live. I apologize if help me with the name here, Sol.
Tenoch Huerta.
Thank you. Who played Namor in Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, has been accused of sexual assault by musician Elena Rios. We got his response to her accusation as well. I've been trying to find a more accurate version of her statement. Unfortunately, hers was all put out in Spanish, so the translation's a little rough. So I figured I didn't want to misquote with a poor Google translation. So I think you've got the USA Today article up in front of you. I've got the CBS one. I believe more of her statement is in the US because the CBS article, which came out late last night, has his response to his denial of the allegations. Whereas the USA Today article, I think, is mostly the allegations themselves.
Yeah.
But that's kind of like the long and the short of what this is both similar and different in a lot of ways to the Jonathan Majors and I mean really Ezra Miller situation. Being on the cusp of the Flash coming out this Friday. Do you want to start off just kind of walking us through Ms. Rios's allegations, and then we'll go to the Tenoch Huerta side of things?
So in the USA Today article, it says the Mexican actor, known for his role as Namor in the Marvel movies, was accused of sexual assault by musician and activist Elena Rios in a series of tweets over the weekend. On Thursday, Rios called Huerta a predator while slamming the nonprofit Poder Prieto, a racial justice advocacy group, for not compensating her for a podcast appearance. So she has issues with multiple people.
Mm-hmm.
And alleging the group was protecting Tenoch. Huerta is a member of the group, according to his official Instagram page, though he is not listed on the nonprofit's membership page. In a follow-up tweet on Saturday, Rios, who was also part of the group, said she made it very clear in my exit form, so Poder Prieto, that protects the violent sexual predator Tenoch Huerta, to not publish anything from me. The group had recently shared an episode of podcast on a social media which featured Rios. So, and then Tenoch responded in a statement on his Instagram story saying that it's false and completely unsubstantiated.
Yeah, the statement that we have from in the CBS article is about a year ago, I dated Elena for several months. It was entirely consensual at all times, as countless others can attest, and throughout it was a loving, warm, and mutually supportive relationship. After it ended, however, Elena began to misrepresent our interactions, both privately and in front of groups of mutual friends. As a result, a few months ago, I engaged a legal team to commence the appropriate actions to protect my reputation and refute these irresponsible and false accusations that can cause great prejudice and damage. Although I am by no means perfect, I know that these allegations are simply untrue, and while I've always worked to improve myself, I need to contest claims that are both false and offensive. In the statement from Ms. Rios, she talked about how it was very difficult to come about. It was difficult to talk about the emotional abuse and abuse of power of a sexual predator who is loved in the world for playing a character in a movie like Tenoch Huerta. Why am I late talking about it? Because I have a process. Why didn't I report? Because I was afraid that this would happen. People who refuse to believe that a superhero is an abuser, manipulator, and sexual predator. Yes, you, Tenoch Huerta, abuse because you know you have power. There's a lot here.
Yeah.
A lot here.
Yes.
So in the similarities we have of unfortunately the only similarity really to like the Jonathan Majors situation is that we have an allegation made against an actor from a Marvel movie. That's kind of where the similarities stop.
Yeah.
Uh, Jonathan Majors attorneys came out and basically said, "Yeah, it happened, but it's not what you think."
Yeah.
Which is
And he was arrested too.
and he was actually arrested. But yeah, but again, the idea of coming out and saying, "Yeah, it happened, but not like you think," it's a weird stance to take. It's a weird stance to take, especially because that didn't play out. The picture that Jonathan Majors lawyers were painting did not come out the way they painted it.
Yeah.
As opposed to this situation where it's not his lawyers, it's him himself coming out and flat out denying it. And like with any of these situations, it's, and you and I were speaking about this off mic, but in a world where things like the Amber Heard Johnny Depp situation have occurred, situations like this are always rough,
Difficult,
dark, and difficult enough on their own. Living in a post Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial world, it just makes it already messier.
Yeah.
And it's already messy enough just because of the situation being alleged. So we now, and granted, this is kind of how it should be, but we have to go through both sides of the story with the finest tooth comb as possible. Granted, it's kind of how it should be anyway, because obviously if an accusation is made, you want to investigate it as thoroughly as possible, but you want to investigate it as thoroughly as possible. It's dangerous to just blindly best way to phrase
blindly
this.
accept or blindly deny.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just trying to be very careful with my
either way. Yeah. And I think I spoke about this too with the Jonathan Major stuff, is that it's just really sad, because if it's true, then that's just really sad, because you have an actor of color. So unfortunately things get, when you're a person of color, an actor of color, you're representing your race and not yourself as a person. So that sucks. It also sucks because, like, talented actor, but now is not a good dude if he did do it.
Yeah.
If he didn't do it, this is something that's going to follow him for the rest of his career and the rest of his life. Kind of in the same way that even though, like, Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, there was a trial, there was a verdict of the trial, there's still people who believe Amber Heard's side of things and don't believe Johnny Depp's side of things, even after a trial. So it's sad either way. And it comes back to the believe women thing that happened after Me Too, which was a great thing. When reasonable and logical people say believe women, what they're saying is take anything that they say seriously.
Look into it
In an unbiased third-party manner. And if it did happen, punish the person who did it. Because way too many times before, if you spoke up, you lost your job, you were blacklisted, so I think a lot of times when people, I think asking why didn't you come forward earlier, or those kind of questions, are disingenuous, but these things need to be looked into. And it's did he do it? Did he not do it? And unfortunately, they're in the public eye, so you want to look into it as much as possible. And you probably have some more thoughts, but I have some more thoughts of the difference between the Jonathan Major stuff and Tenoch Huerta.
I mean, it's a lot. There's so much to unpack here. And in conjunction with what you were talking about, I mean, the idea of like, why wait so long to say something? You gotta open up yourself and your life in a lot of different ways that most people probably wouldn't be comfortable with for something good, let alone for something as bad as this. I mean, how many of us have, like, to put it in the simplest terms possible, like how many of us have sat and waited and bided our time for the right moment to ask someone on a date, or ask our parents for something we wanted, ask our significant other to go do something. We put stuff off when it's anything that's going to put us through, when we're afraid the results could be not what we want. So when there's high reward but also high risk, this is the highest of risk, where the only reward is the person that already allegedly did this bad thing to me gets in trouble. That's not going to change the fact that this bad thing allegedly happened.
Right.
So the idea of coming forward, like, why did you wait so long? You know, when you look at like what happened with the Brett Kavanaugh situation, you know, where someone, you know, opened up decades later.
Yeah.
The moment that she did, every aspect of her life and her past were picked apart with surgical precision. That's the kind of thing that a person has to take into account, is this is going to disrupt your life forever.
Yeah.
So if you're going to, if you decide if you are deciding whether or not to come forward about it, some people just can't bring themselves to open themselves up like that. It's a scary thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the kind of thing that, so when we talk about that, I get so sick of hearing that as why'd she wait so long?
Yeah.
Until it happens to you, allegedly, you don't know what's going through this person's head. And to what you mentioned about the Johnny Depp thing, Johnny Depp still has trouble getting work. He by every stretch of the imagination won that case.
And it's speaking about Johnny Depp, in that case, we found out he himself was abused as well.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of that came across allegedly. I'm going to say allegedly because that wasn't what the suit was about, so I don't want to get in trouble.
It wasn't a criminal case. It was a
case, so. Yeah, but and he didn't come forward with that stuff until the case opened up either. Yeah, so
he didn't come forward until he himself was accused of it.
Yeah.
And it was one of those where, well, now this is going to come out, because the only way he had to defend himself against those allegations was to open up about his own.
Yeah.
And so, and regardless of, and to your point about how there are some people who still believe we're still on Amber Heard's side, Johnny Depp, that's going to follow Johnny Depp around for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
The other day, a couple weeks ago, I forget, Alexandra Daddario was at, I think TIFF. I think she was at TIFF. It was one of the big film festivals, and was one of the panel judges, you know, who was watching these movies and giving feedback on them. And people were asking her about whether or not she was going to go watch the one that Johnny Depp was in that was there. And she was just kind of like, why are we talking about, like, why are we still, like, that's a ridiculous question. It was obviously a question that somebody was asking for the sole purpose of setting her up for a soundbite. But more to the point, that this was the Johnny Depp Amber thing was over a year ago.
Yeah.
And it's going to follow her.
And was a court case too.
It was a court case. So to apply it to this situation, she, in order for Ms. Rios to make this accusation, is to know that this is going to be this is going to be, you know, to borrow a quote from A Few Good Men, this is going to be stapled to everything she does for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
Especially because she herself is in the entertainment arts world as a musician. So, like, this is something that's going to follow her around.
And to add a little background too, she is a victim of a near fatal acid attack by a
Yeah.
former relationship. And so when you do have someone that clearly had physical abuse,
Yeah.
probably emotional abuse by a previous partner, you, and not saying that I do believe her, but not saying that I don't believe her either, but you want to believe her
Yeah.
kind of things because it's, and if these allegations are true, how terrible to have not just one, but two people in your life doing this to you
So
or doing something similar.
yeah. So the story that the thing that Soul's talking about is, so back in 2019, Ms. Rios was, I believe in her, I'm pulling up the article here. She was in her studio and, yeah, in her studio, and a group of men broke in and threw acid at her. And I don't think they ever found out exactly who these guys were, but she claimed that, or alleged that they were like people, like friends of an ex-boyfriend or something like that,
Yeah.
from a nasty relationship she had been in. So so it's one of those where, like, clearly this is someone who has had an experience with abusive, violent relationships. So on the one hand, this is someone who's opened up about this kind of thing before, who's
Yeah.
been through this before. Um, and it's a lot.
Yeah. And
It's a
I,
lot.
going into like the differences between like the Jonathan Majors case and this, first off, Jonathan Majors was arrested.
Yep.
So that's one of the biggest difference.
Charges were filed.
Charges were filed. When that came out, there were people who formerly worked with him that said, "Oh, I'm not surprised." Came out and talked about how awful he was to work with, how like, he was a dick on set, like things
Yeah.
of that nature. This kind of behavior is not surprising. So far, to my knowledge, we haven't had anything like that with Tenoch Huerta after these allegations. We do have people before these allegations talking about how much of a joy it is to work on set with him and that he's hardworking and just the nicest guy.
Mhm.
So there you have a little bit of a difference between the two of them. You also have where in the Jonathan Majors case, you had the woman going, "Oh, I'm so sorry you got in trouble." All of this trying to. Oh, I'm sorry. 1 second.
Okay. Go ahead. Um,
And then, sorry guys, we're live. If you ever guessed
alive.
the,
Fuck it, we're live.
but she, when text came out of her trying to be like, "Oh, don't want you to get in trouble," kind of things, like, and that's kind of, people were looking at that as the behavior of like someone who, like, because there's one thing to have physical harm happen to you, it's another thing to have even more physical harm happen to you because you told other people or that person got in trouble because of you, kind of
Yeah.
thing. So you saw that more on the Jonathan Majors side of what was being alleged was seeming more like it actually did happen,
Mhm.
where on this side it's very, and it's very new, is a toss up of, and you also had Tenoch Huerta already in the background working when he was hearing mutual friends speaking about this, got a lawyer, started working on trying to combat this behind the scenes, I believe, for about 3 months already.
Mhm.
So there's a little bit of difference in the way these two men acted after. The PR team completely dropped Jonathan Majors, whereas like Tenoch Huerta's PR team is working with him to
Yeah. And
fight these allegations.
it's worth mentioning, it's been 24 hours
Yeah.
as far as Tenoch Huerta goes. You know, Jonathan Majors, a lot of that stuff broke down over the course of like a week or two.
Yeah.
But so anything could happen, obviously, after today. But it you know, going to the part you brought up where like, yeah, like when the accusations about Jonathan Majors came out, people left and right were like, yeah, fuck that guy. He was a dick. He was a pain
Yeah.
in the ass to work with, was a complete, just monster on set. Everything about Tenoch Huerta that we've heard from people in the past has been that, like, yeah, no, he rules. He's the
Yeah.
best. And it's interesting when you look at the fact that, like, you've got Jonathan Majors, who's only really been acting professionally since 2017.
Yeah.
Whereas Tenoch Huerta has been acting, granted, internationally, but acting since 2006.
Yeah. And
This is a
in
guy
that
who's
short of a time too, to have people say you're a dick.
yeah, like this is a guy who's been Tenoch Huerta has been around. Granted, not necessarily as a big name, but he's been in the industry a long time.
Yeah.
You got to figure at this point, someone would be like, yeah, no, that guy. But again, it's only been 24 hours, but still,
Yeah.
like with Jonathan Majors, it was
Immediate.
it was immediate. They were like, yeah, that guy is a piece of shit.
Yeah.
So
I think
there's
it's
also,
like hours, like
yeah.
2 hours later, we were
By the
hearing.
time we went live, it had already
Yeah.
come out that he was a complete tool,
Yeah.
behind the scenes.
And
So
with him too, with Tenoch, is he, like, again, in his statement, when working already to fight these allegations, and granted, it's his friends, and friends will stick up for their friends all
sure,
the time, but he's saying there's mutual friends that will speak to the way that they were when they were in a relationship. Granted, you can be very different in front of other people than the way you are behind closed doors, but if he is so certain and so sure that all the people that spent time around the two of them would speak about the relationship being loving and caring, then it feels different,
something. So when the Jonathan Majors situation came out and his lawyers were making their statements, I remember thinking something about this feels off.
Yeah.
But it was in the Jonathan Majors camp. Like something
Right.
felt off. This situation, something just feels off, period.
Yeah.
Like it feels off with the Tenoch Huerta camp. Something feels off with the allegation. Something just feels off. Something isn't sitting right. And
Yeah.
it's because there's, again, we talk about like both sides. Like believing, when we talk about believing someone, we mean looking into it to the fullest degree.
Yeah.
Some people hear the term believe women and they think, oh, so just guilty till proven innocent. No, believing just means looking into it and not saying, whatever.
Yeah.
Believing it means looking into it until you can say for a fact something happened, whether or not
Yeah.
something happened. So looking at the information we have here, there are things in both sides working for and against both sides of this thing.
Yeah.
Because on the one hand, with Tenoch Huerta, we've got, like we've been talking about, the fact this guy has been around for almost 20 years in the acting industry, not a blip against his character so far. This is a woman who has been through hell and just an absolutely violent, awful relationship in the past. So you expect someone, so not expect, but you have the understanding that someone like this knows the signs when she sees them, because
Yeah.
she's seen them before.
Right.
What doesn't quite sit with me, choosing my words very carefully here, on the allegation side of things, is everything to do with this Poder Prieto thing.
Yeah.
This organization, I believe it's an activist organization.
Yeah, it's a racial justice advocacy group.
the fact that the elements of this story that involve Poder Prieto
and not
is
being
where,
compensated.
that's all of that is where
Yeah.
this, I think, is, because it's like, what? And I don't like thinking like this. I don't like
Yeah.
thinking like this. I don't like thinking like this. Is that's not a good look. It's not a good look that the accusations come up after whatever this. I have tried to look into this thing. Everything about Poder Prieto that I can find online is in Spanish. I don't trust Google Translate because what I have translated already, I try reading it and I'm like, something got lost here. So I'm not going to pretend to like fully grasp the situation of what went down. To my understanding, she appeared on their podcast or a podcast supported by them.
Yes.
And either she was promised compensation and didn't get it, or she wanted compensation and didn't get it, whatever the case might be, after the fact. And then that's when she was putting them on blast and then
claiming that they were protecting Tenoch.
protecting him. Now, it is important to point out that while Tenoch Huerta claims to be a part of this organization, they do not have him listed on their like personnel their membership in their membership. So it could just be that he's just like a big fan supporter. From what I've read, it seems like they do good work.
Yeah. Saying, yeah, I'm going to try to quickly so Poder Prieto originated out of the necessity to change the narrative and racial practices which have been normalized, basically reproduced, or basically like being done and perpetuated in the industry, audiovisual, and entertainment. There are collective group of actors, members in the industry, audiovisual, civil organizers, academics, and personas de esfuerzo horizonte y lucha que han vivido en. They're just a group of a bunch of different types of people that are of different backgrounds, but mostly of actors and I would say probably the industry folk.
Yeah, it sounds like it sounds like a community of like of non-white, multi-background, multi-ethnic entertainers trying to fight against racism.
Yeah.
Which I mean, yeah.
And not even just like non-white, but darker skinned. Because in Latin America, it's not really racism, it's colorism, because the lighter skinned people are still people of color when they come to United States. But because where they are, they get, because they either more European features or lighter skin, they are treated better than their darker skinned counterparts, even though they're considered brown or darker skinned in the United States or Canada or the UK.
And like to back up the point, like from the two articles we have here, like he is nowhere on their website.
Yeah.
So the idea, again, I'm not trying to sound like I'm trying to blow holes in stories here, but but I'll tell you something.
Looking at it logically, and
it doesn't look good. I also will say this, like looking at his response, his denial. What doesn't sit super great with me in his denial is the part where he says, I am by no means perfect. While I always work to improve myself, I need to contest it. But so why throw that in there?
I think
that I can see
why it feels weird. It can feel weird, but I can understand why it was thrown in.
Yeah. I feel like that statement didn't go through a publicist.
Nah, that was him for that was him himself.
Which on the one hand, I mean, respect.
Yeah.
But maybe it should have gone through a publicist because any lawyer or any publicist on her side that's worth their salt is gonna
use that. Yeah.
Is gonna latch on to those two parts of his statement.
Yeah.
So, and it's also like, look, trauma makes people. I'm about to say trauma can. There's a minuscule silver lining that can come with trauma, in that when you experience trauma, when you experience an abusive relationship, it can make it easier to identify the warning signs of another one.
Yeah.
But speaking as someone who's been in multiple, it can also at times make you think you're seeing red flags when you're not. I've had many relationship crash and burn because I was so convinced completely innate behavior was a red flag.
Yeah.
Because the abuser used to do this thing. This person also does this thing. I can't help but associate that.
Yeah.
I am no way, shape, or form saying that that's what happened here.
Yeah.
But
it's we're bringing our own experiences to it.
Yeah.
And sometimes too, depending on where you're at, when you do go through something that she has gone through in her previous relationship, you can become sometimes people get stronger, and then sometimes people regress. Yeah. And so anything that seems where, like, let's say us as friends, and I'm like, hey, you piece of shit, Mike, how you doing today? Like, you would be like, hey, what's up? Like, yeah. But like if you had regressed, if I said that, I'd be like, wow, Soul's being really mean today. Like,
to speak to a personal experience, I was in a relationship in college that was emotionally, verbally, physically abusive. And what my ex used to constantly say to me when she was doing the thing she was doing is she would scream, "What is wrong with you?" at me while an incident was happening. Years later, I was seeing someone else, and when you're with somebody, you play fight,
Yeah.
And I didn't know this was going to be a thing for me, but she, in the play fighting, was like, "What is wrong with you?" And it triggered me hard, and I didn't know that was gonna be triggering for me. So of course she didn't. Granted, the moment it happened, she recognized immediately what had happened, and but like that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Is like, you never know what's gonna. It's like PTSD. Yeah. I just rewatched Band of Brothers, and
sometimes people can't be sensitive to that either. Yeah. Like, you don't know what's going on, so you might not know how to react yourself to someone else's triggers.
Yeah. Like I said, I just watched Band of Brothers again, and Colonel Dick Winters talks about when he got home from World War II, was out for a walk, and a kid was running by dragging a stick on a fence because it was the 40s. That's what you did for fun. And the clack, 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 clack of dragging the stick against the fence sounded so much like the machine gun fire that he talked about how he jumped into the drainage ditch because it just took him there. So it's because this attack she suffered was only in 2019. That is not that long ago. And if considering, based on the timeline, it sounds like this relationship happened in 2022.
Yeah.
Like, so just recently, because he says a year ago they dated for several months.
Right.
So it would have been
Yeah.
last summer, I guess, give or take. That's only four. That's a 3-year separation from when this attack happened to her. That
Yeah.
is not a long time. So it's I can't even imagine, like, I can't even like fathom, you know,
Yeah.
what kind of apprehension she must have with people just in general, particularly somebody you're romantically involved with to any
Yeah.
extent. So
So yeah, it's something that is really tricky,
yeah,
and it's something that nothing is really ever black and white. There's a lot of gray. I feel like this probably has a lot of gray to it when whatever comes out comes out.
yeah,
Um, who knows if there will be a trial or a settlement? We'll find that out and forward. Find that out too with Jonathan Majors. I believe
yeah, and
there is at least going to be a trial because he was arrested,
yeah,
but
and it's important to point out that like as new information becomes available, as
you
you
can
know,
change your mind.
you can change your mind. Like, to we mentioned the Me Too situation, and the Believe Women movement, things like that. Remember what you got to remember what happened to Aziz Ansari.
Yeah,
Because what happened to him was in the midst of the Me Too movement. He basically went on a date with a girl. They went back to his place and just had really bad sex. And I mean, just really bad sex. Just a really bad sexual encounter. And the next day, she, claimed that he,
yeah,
you know, did these terrible things, and he immediately was like, "That's not what you're." And then when she described what happened, even her friends were coming out in public and saying, "Yeah, that's not sexual assault. That's just bad sex. It's
yeah,
just it's a bad, uncomfortable situation that nobody was having a good time in, and probably just never should have happened to begin with."
yeah,
So, but that still follows the season. Sorry, because it was in the midst of the
yeah,
true hype of the Me Too movement, when every other day it was uh, um, Casey Affleck
yeah.
and I'm suddenly blanking on the 1001
Harvey
name.
Weinstein.
Harvey Weinstein, James Franco. I mean, all these names were coming out. So it's one of those. I hate that this has to happen in the public eye, because this is the kind of thing that, because the court of public opinion is ruthless.
Yes.
The court of public opinion is not is biased and unfair to either side of the
Yeah.
situation.
And
And go ahead.
I was gonna say, and to people who would say like, "Oh, I wish then that Me Too didn't happen because
Nah.
things like Aziz Ansari or things like Johnny Depp, Amber Heard, you're stupid because like so many awful men were found out that wouldn't have been found out, and it's changed a cultural aspect of a working situation for women that have made things safer for women in the industry.
Yeah.
So,
A
and at
lot.
the end of the day, you're like, there's terrible people no matter what gender they are. They could be a
Yeah.
man, a woman, they could be non-binary. There's going to be good and bad people of any gender. And sometimes you're going to get these awful men doing awful things to women. And sometimes you're going to get women who are ticked off and mad after a relationship that decide that they want to ruin someone's life.
Yeah.
And both things can be true at the same time.
we said this about the Jonathan Major situation. We said this about several other topics that you and I have covered in our time, not just on this show, but on other shows.
Yeah.
Which is that there are three sides to every story. There's what he said, there's what she said, and then there's what actually happened.
Yeah.
Because everyone has their own perception of events, and then there's the actual facts and truth of what happened. So this is just going to be another one of those where, you know, I'm not taking anyone's side.
Yeah.
Until facts come out. If the facts come out
Right.
that he did this, fuck him.
Yeah.
Fuck him. If it comes out that it didn't happen,
fuck her.
Fuck her.
Yeah.
If it's a situation where she's just traumatized from a past relationship and a misinterpretation happened, I mean, still kind of fuck her, but also like, let's get her some help so this doesn't happen again.
Right. Right.
Again, we weren't there. We don't know. All we can do is talk about what we do know,
Yeah.
which is what the information we have now.
And I think for most people too, when things like this happen, I hope that more people look at it in the way that you and I are looking, where you're like, let's not take a side.
Yeah.
And let's look at this logically. It's hard not to get emotions into it, but
Sure.
let's do what we ask of people to do, which is to look into it, read everything about it, hope that people actually take it seriously and look into it to a full extent in a non-biased manner. And if it happened, it's taken care of. And if it didn't happen, it's taken care of on the person being accused, a person who's accusing side. So like either way, this is not a good look for either party.
Nope.
Because it's going to follow both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Forever.
And this is the last thing Marvel needs right now.
Yeah.
So
hopefully they don't learn what DC has been learning recently, but we'll find out at the end of the box office this weekend. Their stuff is on tape. So
a whole other conversation.
Yep.
There are parallels between the Ezra Miller situation and this too. It's far too much to go into.
Yeah.
You know, with nothing else we can really say at this point that we haven't already said, which is just we don't know yet. Here's what we've gone over everything we do know. It's a mess.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to look at this, look at both sides of this and think that one has like some kind of much stronger case than the other. Because honestly,
like we said, it's 24 hours.
It's been 24 hours. Like we know Jack. So
something can come out after we end that's show someone saying he's a total dick, or something can come out saying she's a compulsive liar.
She might accidentally tweet out a screenshot of text messages with her and her friend saying, "Oh my God, I'm going to totally set this guy up to fail because I really hated Black Panther Wakanda Forever." Or a video could get leaked of him beating the crap out of her.
Yeah.
Or her psychiatrist could come out and say like no PTSD. Literally anything could happen. Yeah. It's been a day.
And with in science, when new evidence is given, you change your opinion based on the evidence and facts that are in front of you.
It's what an idea. You ever change your mind, Soul? Happened to me once.
Only once?
Yeah, I'm pretty smart. I'm kidding. I need to laugh. So so just keep an eye out for more information. We probably won't go live on this again unless something truly just world shattering comes out about it. But oof.
Yeah.
Getting real tired of having this conversation. So
can people just not?
Can we just not? Can we just not? It's not hard, folks. It's not hard to not be a dick. That's all I'm saying. It's really easy to not be a dick. You just don't be a dick. That I think is going to do it though for us on this issue. What a day. What a day. And these two people are having an even worse day because they're the ones actually having to live this. So thank you those of you who have tuned into this live or who maybe are hanging out with watching this after the fact. Please make sure you like and subscribe. I hate having to ask people to do that after a serious conversation, but
I promise there's a lot more fun stuff on this channel than just
go watch our Harley Quinn reactions. They're fantastic. They're absolutely wonderful. Or go watch our Ted Lasso reviews because I completely just disintegrated in the finale review. But go watch those and stay tuned to everything else coming off of this channel now and in the future. And we'll see you guys again here next time on Off. I'm on a new setup, so I got to look away because my stuff's not set up where it needs to be yet. We'll see you guys again here next time on Off the Wall. Bye.